The morning started like any normal day for the quiet university student. She walked across the campus with her backpack held close, listening to the noise of other students around her. People knew her as someone who kept to herself, someone who spent most of her time in the library or in the small corner of the cafeteria where she liked to sit alone. No one ever imagined there was anything unusual about her. She looked like any other student trying to finish assignments, attend lectures, and survive long days. But even while she acted normal, there were small things people never noticed. She always chose the seat near the door. She never startled when loud sounds came from construction near the parking lot. Once, during a fire drill, everyone around her panicked, but she stood still and calm, helping a girl who had dropped her books. People thought she was just strangely confident. No one questioned her deeper. That day, she entered her classroom early and sat quietly, taking out her notebook. She looked peaceful, but inside, something was different. She had woken up with a strange feeling in her chest, as if something important was going to happen. She tried ignoring it, telling herself it was only stress from exams. But the feeling did not leave. Outside the campus, the sky was clear, and the normal city sounds filled the air. No one expected anything unusual to happen. But far away, a call center operator in a national emergency unit received a coded alert. Only a few people in the entire country understood what that alert meant. It was not a normal emergency. It was a level shadow signal one that was never supposed to activate unless something critical had gone wrong. Back in the classroom, the student felt her phone vibrate. She checked the screen and froze. It was a message she had hoped she would never see again. A single line of text, without explanation, without details, just an activation code. The same code she had memorized years ago, long before she ever came to this university. Her throat tightened. Her calm eyes shifted for the first time in months, showing a trace of fear. And something stronger, duty. She stood up slowly, pretending she needed some fresh air. The professor had not yet arrived, and only a few students were inside. No one paid attention as she walked out. She moved across the hallway quickly, her steps firm. Her hands shook once, but only slightly. She forced them to be steady. Outside, she took a deep breath and looked around the open campus. Nothing looked wrong. Students were sitting on benches, laughing, talking, eating breakfast. But somewhere above them, the distant sound of heavy aircraft blades began to hum. People ignored it at first, thinking it was a news helicopter. But the sound grew louder, sharper, more powerful. Heads turned upward. Two large Black Hawk helicopters cut across the sky in formation, moving directly toward the campus. Students stopped walking. Some took out their phones to record. Others asked if there had been an accident nearby. The noise shook the windows. Security officers ran out, confused and unsure whether to clear the area. The student stood still, her heart beating harder with every second. She knew they were not here for the school. They were here for her. One of the helicopters hovered low, sending strong waves of air across the ground. The doors slid open, and men in uniform stepped forward, holding something in their hands. A document, a badge, something official. Crowds gathered in shock as one officer shouted something through a speaker, but the noise of the blades made it hard to hear. People pushed forward, whispering fast. Who are they here for? Is something happening in the city? Why are Black Hawks landing on our campus? The officer repeated the name. This time the students around her heard it clearly. They turned to look at her with wide eyes. Some stepped back. Others simply stared, unable to understand how the silent girl who rarely spoke in class could be connected to aircraft like these. Her secret, the one she had hidden for years, was no longer hidden. The officer pointed directly at her and motioned for her to approach. The campus went silent. Even the helicopter's roar felt distant, Compared to the shock running through the crowd, she took one slow breath and walked forward. Her steps were steady now. She knew this moment would change everything: her studies, her quiet life, the normal world she had tried to build around herself. She reached the officer, who saluted her with complete respect. Everyone around them gasped. She lowered her eyes once, thinking about all the days she had tried to be ordinary, all the time she wanted to forget the past. But destiny had called her back, and she could not ignore it. The officer handed her a sealed folder. The emergency call had revealed her true identity. And now the entire campus knew she was never just a student. Asterisk. The moment she stepped into the Black Hawk, the door slid shut behind her, shutting out the shocked faces of her classmates. The roar of the blades faded into a deep, steady vibration inside the cabin. But even with all that noise, the cabin felt strangely quiet. The soldiers seated inside did not look at her with confusion. They looked at her with recognition, respect, relief, as if the arrival of one young student had lifted a weight from their shoulders. But the unique part was not their reaction. It was hers. She did not sit like a frightened civilian. She did not ask questions. Instead, the second the helicopter lifted off the ground, she reached for the harness, fastened it quickly, and then closed her eyes, not to rest, but to remember. Each click of the strap sounded like a memory returning to life. For the first time in years, she did not feel like a stranger pretending to fit in. She felt like herself. A lieutenant across from her leaned forward. "We thought you were gone. For good," he said softly, speaking as if no one else could hear. "We were told you wanted to stay out of this world." "I did," she answered quietly. "But the code was sent. That means there was no choice." He nodded and handed her a small device. Inside it was a map, a pulse, and a red blinking point moving steadily across a restricted zone. The signal was unstable, flickering like a heartbeat under stress. She stared at it with a steady expression. "How long has the signal been active?" 17 minutes, the lieutenant replied. "We lost contact with the entire team at 18 minutes. No radio, no return call, nothing." Silence filled the cabin for a moment. "So the call," she said slowly, "was their last resort." "Yes." She closed her eyes again, letting the truth settle. They had contacted the one person who had once been part of them, the one person they thought could do what others could not. She had promised herself she would never return to this life. But when people needed help, real help, the promise no longer mattered. Outside the window, the campus grew smaller and smaller until it looked like a child's drawing. The helicopter curved east, heading toward the mountains that cut through the horizon like a broken wall. The lieutenant hesitated before speaking again. "You know, many of the new recruits don't even believe the stories about you." "Good," she replied softly. "Let them stay normal. Let them stay young." "But today," he said as he studied her, "they will finally learn your name." She did not respond. She kept her focus on the blinking red signal. It pulsed faster now, showing distress, showing danger. The kind of danger that her old life had trained her to face. The pilot's voice came through the headset. "Approaching restricted zone. All personnel prepare for descent." The lieutenant tightened his gear. The soldiers lifted their weapons, not for attack, but for readiness. But she did something different. She reached into the small pouch handed to her earlier and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. When she unfolded it, the soldiers grew silent. It was not a weapon. It was an identification badge. A faded badge from a division that officially did not exist. Every soldier in that cabin had heard rumors about that badge. Rumors of a specialist. Team trained for situations too delicate to be public, too dangerous for normal units, too critical for mistakes. No one expected to ever meet one of its members again. The team had been dissolved, records wiped, files locked away, yet here she was holding the badge that proved she had once belonged to them. The lieutenant whispered, So the stories were true. She placed the badge around her neck, but her eyes stayed calm. Stories are exaggerated. I just did my part. The pilot called out again. Altitude dropping. We have visual on smoke. Everyone moved toward the door. She stepped forward too, but she did not look tense. She looked focused, almost peaceful. The closer they flew, the more the situation became clear. Something on the mountain ridge had exploded. Trees were burning in small patches. The ground below showed damage from what looked like a crashed vehicle or equipment. There was no movement. No sign of the missing team. The helicopter hovered and a rope was prepared for descent. The lieutenant signaled her to go last. No, she said firmly. I go first. He hesitated. Are you sure? The terrain is unstable. If the team is alive, she said, gripping the rope, every second matters. Without waiting, she stepped out into the wind. The blades thundered above her as she lowered herself rapidly through the smoke-filled air. The heat from the fire brushed against her arms. The ground looked broken, twisted, dangerous. When her boots touched the earth, she unhooked the rope, looked around, and listened. The forest was silent, too silent. But somewhere deep inside that silence, she felt it. A faint vibration, like a signal calling only to her. She whispered to herself, "Hold on, I'm here." Her quiet student life had ended. Her true mission had begun. The glowing structure reacted the moment she stepped closer, before she even touched it. A soft hum rose from the metal, almost like it recognized her presence. The chamber lights flickered again, and the dust on its surface vibrated as if the machine had been sleeping for years and was now trying to wake fully. The lieutenant raised his weapon slightly, not in aggression but in fear of the unknown. But she didn't step back. Instead, she took a slow breath, reached into her pocket, and pulled out something none of the soldiers expected, a tiny metal key, no bigger than a coin, worn around the edges from age. She had kept it hidden for years, tucked away like a memory she didn't want to revisit. The injured man's eyes widened. You kept it. It was the only thing I never threw away, she replied quietly. The lieutenant looked confused. What is that? She didn't answer with words. She held up the key, and the machine responded instantly. A faint beam extended from its center, not bright but precise, as if it had been waiting only for her. She whispered, "It still remembers the code." The lieutenant stepped beside her, lowering his flashlight. What even is this thing? It doesn't look like any device we've trained with. She walked around the machine slowly, touching nothing, studying each curved line, each panel. It was part of a secret program, one that ended before any of you joined the forces. Even I was too young to understand everything at the time. They called it Project Silent Gate. The injured man nodded weakly. A defensive mechanism, but one that was never used. Too unpredictable. Unpredictable? The lieutenant repeated. She stopped walking and faced the machine. Because it reacts to people. Not voices, not fingerprints, not weapons people. Their intent, their training, their emotional state. It was supposed to protect the country at its most desperate hour. Then why shut it down? The lieutenant asked. She looked at the humming structure, her voice low. Because no one could control it. Except one group. The lieutenant swallowed slowly. Your old division. She nodded. The machine glowed brighter now, as if listening to every breath she took. She felt the vibrations through the ground again, this time stronger, steady. Almost like a heartbeat calling out for activation. The injured man spoke urgently. We tried to move it. That's when everything went wrong. When the team disappeared, when the signal went silent. So it wasn't an attack or crash, she said softly. It was the machine. The lieutenant tensed. Is it dangerous right now? Only if someone tries to access it incorrectly, she replied. But it will not harm those who come with correct intent. The problem is that the device has been asleep for years. It woke up confused. It doesn't know if it should defend or wait. She lifted the old key and held it forward. The machine suddenly emitted a deeper tone, not threatening, but powerful enough to shake the stones around them. A circular panel in the center shifted and opened, revealing another slot shaped exactly like her key dot. The soldiers exchanged stunned glances. "You're the only one it's accepting," the lieutenant said slowly. She stepped closer. "This is what the emergency code meant," she whispered. The moment they realized the machine had activated, they sent for the last person who could calm it. The lieutenant placed a hand on her shoulder. "Are you sure about this? Once you wake it fully, there's no going back." She turned to him, the calm expression returning to her face, the same calm that once confused her classmates during fire drills. "If we leave it unstable, it could trigger defensive protocols. If we stabilize it, we save everyone. There's no other choice." She inserted the key. The chamber went silent, not quiet silent. Every sound died instantly. Even the fire above seemed muted. The machine recognized the key, and a soft wave of blue light expanded outward, touching the walls, the ground, and the air around them. The lieutenant staggered backward, shocked. She did not move. The blue light washed over her, but instead of pushing her back, it drew her forward gently, as if welcoming her home. Symbols appeared on the machine's surface, old codes she remembered from her training. She read them quickly. Status, partial recovery. Authorization, pending. Awaiting primary operator. The lieutenant stared at her. "Primary operator? It means it wants my command," she said. The injured man struggled to speak. "Be careful. Once you accept, it binds to you again." She placed her hand on the surface of the machine. The metal warmed beneath her touch, responding like a living thing. A soft voice, not human, not robotic, reverberated through the chamber. "Operator identified." She felt something inside her chest tighten. Not fear, responsibility. The voice came again, awaiting your order. The lieutenant looked at her anxiously. "What will you command it to do?" She stared at the faint blue glow reflecting in her eyes. "I will command it," she said slowly, "to stand down and return to sleep." But to do that, the machine needed more than a key dot. It needed her past, her memories, her full reactivation. The choice she tried to leave behind was now standing directly in front of her. Asterisk. The machine did something no one expected. Before she could speak the command, before she could steady her breath, the entire chamber glowed brighter, and then everything around her disappeared. Not physically. Visually. Sound less lie. The world dissolved into white, and suddenly she was no longer in the cave. No soldiers, no rocks, no smoke. Just a vast white space stretching endlessly in every direction. She blinked, confused but steady, her feet planted firmly on invisible ground. Then she heard footsteps. Soft, familiar. She spun around and froze. Standing in front of her was a younger version of herself. The same uniform, the same determined eyes, the same quiet confidence she once carried before choosing a normal life. The younger version spoke with her voice. "You returned." She felt her chest tighten. "This is not real. You are inside the machine's memory core." The younger self replied calmly. "To shut it down, you must pass the verification protocol. And that means remembering who you were." She took a slow breath. "I didn't come to return. I came only to stop it." The younger version stepped closer. "Stopping it means becoming what you once were. It will not listen to a half-forgotten operator." She shook her head. "I wanted a life outside this. A simple life, a quiet one. The machine does not understand quiet, it understands truth." The younger self raised a hand, and suddenly the white space rippled like water. Scenes formed around her. Her old training field. Her first assignment. The day she received the metal key. The promise she made to protect the country in ways no one would ever know. She felt the weight of those memories pressing against her chest, heavy and sharp. Her breathing grew tight, but she stayed still. The younger self walked through the memories. Effortlessly, you tried to bury everything. But a day comes when the world calls for who you really are. Her voice trembled for the first time. I am not that person anymore. You are, the younger version whispered, because you never forgot. The white world faded again, and suddenly she was back in the chamber. The key around her neck glowed. The machine pulsed violently, shaking dust from the ceiling. The lieutenant shouted her name, running toward her, but the vibrations pushed him back. She could barely hear him. The injured man tried to raise his voice. It's reading your memories. It's choosing. The machine spoke again, louder. This time, operator identity confirmed. Emotional integrity unstable. Request in full activation. She whispered under her breath. No, I didn't come here to activate. But the machine didn't wait. It projected a beam of light toward her chest. A scanning line that touched her heart like a warm pulse. She staggered back but did not fall. She felt the machine searching inside her, not physically but emotionally. Measuring something she did not know she still carried. The lieutenant fought through the vibrations. What is it doing? She answered through clenched teeth. It wants to see if I still believe in the oath. What oath? She closed her eyes. The oath that said, if my country calls, I answer. The lieutenant's face shifted. He had seen brave soldiers, strong leaders, and trained officers, but he had never seen someone face a machine that could read their soul. She opened her eyes slowly. The blue glow reflected in them again. Her calm expression returned, not forced, but natural, as if something inside her had settled. It wants me to finish what I started years ago. The lieutenant looked at her with concern. Do you want that? No, she said quietly, but wanting is not the same as needing. The injured man coughed weakly. If you don't stabilize it, it could enter defensive mode. And no one knows what that will cause. Fires, shockwaves, energy pulses. Maybe worse. She glanced at the machine, then at the two men who were injured, exhausted, and depending on her. Her voice softened. I'll do what I must. She stepped forward and placed both hands on the machine. It warmed instantly. The light enveloped her, brighter and deeper, surrounding her like a cocoon of energy. Symbols appeared in front of her, floating as if waiting for a command. She spoke clearly, calmly. Machine, stand down. Return to core sleep. Deactivate emergency mode. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the machine replied, command accepted. But systems unstable. Operator must complete synchronization. The lieutenant shouted, what does that mean? She stared at the machine, feeling its pulse match her heartbeat. It means, she whispered, I have to finish the activation sequence inside its mind. You have to go back into that place? He asked. She nodded slowly. Yes, and this time, it will show me the part of the truth it never revealed. The ground vibrated again, and the chamber shook. She tightened her grip on the machine, knowing the next step would reveal why the emergency call had come for her and no one else. Her secret past was only the beginning. The real truth was still waiting. Asterisk. The chamber vanished again, but this time, it did not turn white. It turned black. A deep, endless black, silent and heavy, as if the entire world had been switched off. She could not see her hands. She could not see her feet. She stood in absolute darkness, unable to tell which direction was forward or behind. Then a single sound cracked through the dark. A heartbeat. Not hers. Not human. It echoed like a distant drum, slow at first, then growing stronger, deeper, heavier. With every beat, faint red lines appeared around her, stretching like veins across the darkness. She whispered, This is the machine's core consciousness. A voice answered, not spoken, not robotic, but something between memory and echo. You left. She turned sharply. Who said that? You left us when we needed you. The darkness shifted, and a figure formed ahead of her. Not human, not machine, something resembling a silhouette built from glowing red lines. Its shape looked almost familiar, as if taken from the outline of an old commander she once trained under. She frowned. You're not real. You're a projection of the machine. The silhouette stepped closer, its voice heavy. Real or not, I am the part of the system built from your past, your training, your fear, your loyalty. She stood firm. I came back to stop you. You did not come back, the voice said. You were called. The darkness shook, a low rumble vibrating beneath her feet. She felt memories she tried to bury pulling at her mind again. The final day of her division, the moment she walked away, the weight of leaving something unfinished. The silhouette lifted an arm, and instantly the darkness shifted into an image of her old training facility, the obstacle course, the shooting range, the long nights of coded drills, the cold mornings where she stood alone, waiting for orders. You swore the oath, the figure said, and then you disappeared. Her voice trembled for the first time since entering the cave. I wanted a life, a normal one. There is no normal for people like you, she clenched her hands. That's not true. The figure circled her like a shadow. Then why did the key stay with you? Why did you keep it hidden all these years? Why did you react to the emergency signal before even reading the message? She opened her mouth, but no answer came, because it was true. She had run from the world she came from, but she had never truly let it go. The discipline, the sense of duty, the part of her that remained alert even in a classroom full of students. Figure stopped in front of her. The machine did not wake by accident. Something triggered it. Something only you were trained to understand. What triggered it? She asked. The figure's face glowed red. A code that did not come from outside, but from inside. Inside the machine? Inside you, her breath caught. Me? I didn't send anything. You did. The figure said, not now, not today. You sent it the day you walked away. The darkness rippled violently, showing a memory she had forgotten. A small terminal, a warning alert, a final command typed with shaking hands locking the machine into sleep mode permanently. Except the command was never permanent. You chose the sleep code, the figure said, not the shutdown code. You left the machine dreaming, not dead. She stared, stunned. I believed it would never wake again. It waited, the figure said, waited for the operator who put it to sleep. It waited for you. She felt her heart pounding. So all this, the activation, the distress call, the machine pulling me into its core, it's because I didn't finish the job. The figure stepped closer. No, it's because you are the only one it trusts to finish it. The darkness trembled again, but this time it wasn't fear pressing against her chest. It was clarity. She finally understood that the machine wasn't trying to fight her. It was trying to return to her, to complete the unfinished command. It needed her, not as a soldier, not as a student, but as someone who had once believed saving lives mattered more than anything else. She lifted her chin. Tell me what I must do. The figure dissolved into drifting red sparks. The heartbeat grew louder, steady, strong. Waiting. A final line of glowing text appeared in the darkness. Operator, issue the final command. She inhaled deeply. I will. The darkness cracked like glass, and the real chamber snapped back around her. The lieutenant caught her as she stumbled, and the injured man looked up in relief. Her eyes glowed faintly with the machine's reflection. I know what to do, she said quietly, but none of them expected what she said next. The final command will change everything. The ground stopped shaking only because she told it to. Not with her voice, not with a shout, but with a single step forward, a step that made the machine react as if recognizing its true commander at last. The blue glow softened, dimmed, and then formed a narrow path of light leading directly to her. The soldiers watched in silence, unsure whether to move closer or stay back. Even the smoke above the cave seemed to pause, hanging in the air as if waiting for her next breath. She walked toward the center of the machine, stopping exactly where the old training memories told her to stand. The injured man tried to sit up, his voice weak. "Be careful. The final command isn't reversible." She looked back at him gently. "I know." The lieutenant stepped forward. "If you do this, what happens to you?" She hesitated. Then she answered with honesty, "I don't know." The lieutenant's jaw tightened. He had seen brave soldiers before, but this was different. This wasn't bravery. This was sacrifice without promise. Duty without reward. A quiet kind of courage only a few people ever carried. The machine's voice rose around them, soft, deep, and almost human. Operator ready, awaiting final instruction. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the weight settle over her fully. Her years of quiet student life felt distant now, almost like a dream she had borrowed but never fully owned. The truth was here, standing in front of her, waiting. The machine pulsed again. "Proceed." She placed both hands on its surface, and instantly the room filled with a warm glow, white this time, not blue. The light rose around her like mist, curling into shapes, circles, memories she had buried for years. But this time, she didn't push them away. She spoke clearly. "Machine. Transfer authority." The lieutenant's eyes widened. "Transfer? To who?" She looked at him with calm, steady eyes. "To no one. I'm ending the system." The injured man gasped. "You'll erase the entire project." She nodded. "It was never supposed to exist this long. It was a temporary shield built for a moment that passed years ago. Keeping it alive only invites danger." The machine responded immediately. "Transfer. Code incomplete. Specify destination." She took a slow breath. "Release all stored protocols. Erase operator dependency. Deactivate core and sleep." The ground trembled again, but gently, almost like a sigh. The lights inside the machine flickered in confusion. "Warning. System collapse will erase all memory. Operator bond will be lost." She whispered. "That's the point." The lieutenant shouted, "Stop! If you erase the operator bond, he could not finish." Because the machine lifted her off the ground, not violently, not aggressively, gently, as if saying goodbye. Her feet hovered inches above the floor, and the white light wrapped around her entirely. She felt warmth in her chest, a warmth that wasn't physical. It was recognition, connection, the last echo of a promise she made long ago. Then the machine spoke one final time. "Operator, do you release us?" She closed her eyes. "I release you." Everything happened in a single breath. The light burst outward. The machine's glow faded. The vibrating hum dropped into silence. A rush of wind filled the chamber, then stilled completely. And then she fell. But before she touched the ground, the lieutenant caught her, holding her upright. Her breathing was slow but steady. Her eyes fluttered open. "It's done," she whispered. The injured man looked at the machine, now dull, lifeless, nothing more than metal. "You shut down Project Silent Gate forever." She nodded. "No one will ever activate it again." The lieutenant exhaled with deep relief. "You saved us, and maybe the whole region." But she shook her head gently. "I didn't save anything. I only finished what I should have finished years ago." The soldiers gathered around, not cheering, not celebrating, only watching with respect deeper than words. She had erased a weapon, not activated one. She had chosen peace, not power. She had used her authority to dismantle the very thing that gave her status, that was real strength. The lieutenant looked at her carefully. "What now? Will you return to your old division?" She offered a faint smile, tired, sincere, free. Know that life is over. The machine was the last piece of it. But the world still needs people like you. The world needs people who choose peace, she answered, not hidden soldiers who live in shadows. The injured man lifted his hand, slightly saluting her. Then today, you chose the world. She stepped outside the cave slowly, feeling the cold air touch her face. Above, the Black Hawk circled once more, waiting for her signal. For the first time in years, she felt light, untied, unburdened. She looked at the sky and whispered to herself, now, I can live a normal life, a real one. Behind her, the machine remained silent forever, and ahead of her, life was waiting.